because I almost never speak in Milwaukee. And so, when Keynote told me that they were going to put this event together, I was more than willing to do it. I'm very happy to do it. And it is actually an honor for me to speak in a city that I care so much about, but that I spend so little time in these days. Because since my book came out, since September 9th, I've been in 39 different cities. And it's been very interesting to travel all around this country. And the one thing that I can say is there's a lot of pain in America. And people are actually suffering in this country. And when you go to Oakland and Tacoma and Gary, and Bridgeport, Hartford, Brooklyn, Harlem, Raleigh, North Carolina, Greensboro, North Carolina, Gaston, North Carolina, and in all of these places, you see this pain. And you see what it is that's happening because we have a country that in some ways has lost its way. And so it is really an honor for me to share a few ideas with you all tonight. And my purpose is to say a few things, and then we want to really open up the floor to your questions. And I'm going to be very happy to answer any questions that you all have. And I just want this to be like a positive experience for those of you who've taken the time to come out tonight. So I want to begin by giving you a quote by Martin Luther King. And what he said is that human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step towards social justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle. It requires the tireless exertions and passionate concern of dedicated individuals. And so my assumption is that every one of you all who came out here tonight, you came because you want to see something different happen for this city and for our children. Because if you came here tonight and you think that Milwaukee is okay, then you should just get the sandwich and go on back home. Because, no, I'm serious. I mean, the reality of it is the city that I love, the city that I'm sure all of you all care about, this is a city that has significant issues. And the reality of it is we're not going to be able to build enough gated condominiums downtown to solve what is happening to us. We're not going to be able to create a situation where we can keep them away from us. Because the them is us. And if we don't figure out how to educate these kids, if we don't figure out a way to give them a future, they're going to have to put armed guards around the PAC and the Arts Council and all of these places where people are going, the places that they tell our kids y'all don't need to know anything about. And I always find it interesting because I grew up in Hillside. So I grew up on 6th and Cherry and on 11th Street between Reservoir and Vine. And it ain't that far from a world that is totally different. And so the reality of it is you ought to be here tonight because what you need to be saying is that in America and in Milwaukee, if we're going to have a real democracy, then we got to figure out how to educate our children. That's right. And we've got to figure out how to have jobs, health care, all of these things that a people need to feel whole. And so, for me, the fight to radically change education in America for our poorest children, a disproportionate number of whom are children of color, this is a fight about social justice. Because changing education and revolutionizing education is not an end, it's a means to an end. And the end ultimately is about freedom. And so you think about it. We live in a world that is so much smaller than it used to be. And so I remember reading this book called The World is Flat by Thomas Friedman. He was just talking about how the world has changed. And the reality of it is that these young people who are in this room tonight, they're not going to be competing with people from New York and Chicago. They're going to be competing with people from all over the world. And that world is so much smaller than it used to be. And you know how it is when people run for office and they have these politicians roll up in your church and start talking about, oh, it takes a whole village to educate a child. First of all, most of them ain't ever been to the village. Couldn't find a village with MapQuest. Roll up in here talking about it takes a whole village to educate a child. I'm sick of that. So I'm gonna give y'all another parable, because I'm tired of that. So let me give you this one that comes out of Friedman's book. It says that every day in Africa, a gazelle gets up. And the gazelle knows that if it can't run faster than the fastest lion, it's gonna get killed. Every day the lion gets up and knows that if it can't run faster than the slowest gazelle, it's gonna starve. Either way, when the sun comes up, they both start running. And what's happening is, every day in this world, when the sun comes up, young people all over this world are running faster than our best young people. And if they're running faster than our best young people, what chance are the kids gonna have who can't read, can't write, can't think, can't compute, can't analyze? No chance.
That's right.
And so when you sit here tonight, I want you to think deeply about what Langston Hughes said. He said that what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? Baltimore. Could be Milwaukee. Could be any city in this country today. And what I want you to think about is that so many of our children are not only having their dreams deferred, they're having their dreams destroyed. And the question is, how long are we going to sit here and allow that to happen? You know, as a black person, I got this image in my mind and in my soul that on February 1st, 1964, students from North Carolina A&T sit down at a lunch counter and demand to be served and change the course of American history. And now in 2015, 4 black students sit down at a lunch counter where they're welcome and can't read the menu.
That's right.
And I ask you, how did this happen? It ain't the kids' fault.
That's right.
It's all of our faults. It's the adults' fault. Because we've not demanded what every child ought to have. So what I want you to think about tonight is, in Milwaukee, we have schools that are buildings, and kids go in them, but they don't learn nothing. They go in them, and they come out of them. And the question is, what is that going to mean? You already know what that's going to mean. So in America, we lie. Because what we say is our children are our most precious gifts from God. But the reality is that's a lie. And it's a lie because if it was, then we wouldn't allow them to go into schools that don't teach them. If it was was true, we would not have them have to deal with educators who see them but don't really see them. It's like Ralph Ellison, the Invisible Man. I see you, but I don't really see you. What I see is a figment of my imagination. And so these kids go into these buildings every day, and even in 2015, they're still having adults tell them that my check gonna come whether you learn or not. I got mine, you got to get yours. Our children are still being told that. And so in a certain sense, they are there, but they are invisible. They're invisible because their interests are not the first thing on our mind. But we say, okay, yeah, I hear that, but I gotta watch Housewives of Atlanta, whatever y'all be watching. I can't go to that meeting because, girl, my show on tonight. I can't do this because I gotta get to the club. So what I'm saying to you is, at some point, if our children mean something to us, we're gonna demand that they have schools that teach them. But it's not just about schools. It's about the community in which they live. Because we have communities, we have neighborhoods in our city where people, how can I put this? If we love our children, they would be in safe, caring, nurturing environments. They wouldn't be in communities where they can get shot sitting on their grandfather's knee in their home. They would not be in communities where they're afraid to be stopped, because you don't know if you get stopped and you black, you don't know if you're ever gonna make it home. And I'm not talking about the dude who was running after you, I'm talking about the police. So we're worried. Every one of you all who got a young black son, you scared every day. You're scared. You're scared for him to go into the community because you don't know what's going to happen to him. And so you live in fear. But we say we care about our children, but yet we allow there to be communities where our children live in fear. We say that we care, but we have homes where people don't even have the minimal needs to take care of those children. People used to ask me, isn't it a lot of pressure to be the superintendent? Hell, the pressure is to be a mother with 5 kids, and you ain't got no help and no support, and you trying to figure out how to take care of them? That's pressure. All pressure is relative, man. You know what I'm saying? If you're a superintendent and you're making $100,000, yeah, you got pressure. But hell, you can get on a plane and go somewhere. If you got no money, what do you do? And my point is, if we care about children, then we gotta have communities that provide the children with decent houses, with health care. If we care about children, we will have communities where the adults in those communities are role models, as opposed to something you're trying to roll the kids away from. Because y'all know it's true. We got some people out here, and I just have to say this. I know that most parents love their children. I honestly believe that. But I don't believe all parents love their children. Because you don't love your child if you hold your child down so she can be raped by your boyfriend. You don't love your child if you're not providing food because you doing something else other than providing for that child. You don't love your child if you like curse him out, as I have experienced, because your child want to go to college. And you talking about that and think he's better than the rest of us. That ain't love, man. I'm sorry. That's something else. And a lot of our children are experiencing the something else. And so, as we sit here tonight, if we're going to be real, if we're going to say we're going to fight for these kids, Henry said we need to fight. If you're going to fight, then all of us who in this fight, teachers, principals, funders, representatives of various organizations, support staff in the schools, parents, elected officials, all of us have got to come together and say that in the city of Milwaukee, it should not make any difference how a child gets to a school, whether it's a voucher, whether it's a charter, whether it's a traditional MPS. The issue that ought to be on all of our minds is, what kind of school is it? Not how does the child get there? And I'm one of the people that helped create this fight. And I admit that. And I'm not backing down on the fact that I think that every low-income and working-class parent in this community ought to have choice for their children. I will never back down on that. I do not think that we should have an America where only people with money have the ability to choose the best school for their children. And if that makes you hate me, then hate on. Because you know and I know that if you got money in America, you got choice. I mean, we got people running around in Milwaukee criticizing people for choosing, and they teach it in schools they would never put their own children in. Demanding that other people's children stay there. Explain to me how that got to be okay. The reality is we have an opportunity in Milwaukee to have 3 sectors, actually more than that, because there are people in here who homeschool. But the reality of it is we ought to be fighting for Milwaukee that says we're going to fight to make sure that there are great schools in MPS, there are great charter schools, there are great private schools. We don't care what kind of school it is. We just want it to be a great school for all children. That should be what we're fighting for in this city. And it's going to require those of us who believe that to stand up and fight. At a certain point in time, we're going to have to say in this city, enough is enough. We just can't. We can't. The 80-80 that Henry talked about. We can't take that, man. Let me explain it to you all this way. For all of y'all who don't understand the moral dimension to this problem, all of y'all who are getting old, and if you're lucky, you're gonna get old. You know what I'm saying? Because the other option is you're not gonna be. And so, as I get older, one of the things that clear to me is I want all these young people to be working. Because Social Security is like really important. And so if you're not fighting for this the right thing to do morally, then start thinking about it in those terms. Or start thinking about it like this. If you get sick, you don't want one of these young people standing over you saying, what instrument should I use? If you get sick and it's in an ambulance, you want them to be able to read the street signs so they can come to your house and not be over on another street because they couldn't read the street signs. Because at some point, you know what the reality is? All these little kids running around here, you're going to be dependent on them to take care of you.
That's right.
Right? Think about that. So what do you want them to be like? So there's a personal reason why you ought to be fighting for these kids, other than just the moral reason. So I want to get through so y'all can ask me whatever you want to ask me. Now, let's be clear. There's going to be a lot of haters out here. Even though I'm sitting here saying we need to fight together, there are going to be people who have a very different view, and there are people in this city who have a very different view about what should be happening from an education standpoint. And I just want to say there ain't nothing wrong with that. Because I don't believe that I got all the right answers, you don't have all the right answers. There are people who differ with me, who I respect because I know they care about kids, they just have a different view of what should happen. But there are some people who their differences have nothing to do with kids.
That's right.
But it has everything to do with keeping control of the power and the money. See, because people tell me, what people told me was, Howard, you know what? You can't get rid of poverty by throwing money at it. Well, actually, that is the way to get rid of poverty. You feel me? Because at a certain point, it is about the money. It is about who got it, who controls it, who uses it, how they use it, how they get it, what they do with it. At a certain point, it is about that. At a certain point, it is about power. Who has the power to make decisions about what happens to you? And so, what I'm trying to tell you all tonight is that we have got to say to ourselves that our children are our most precious gift from God. And that it is our responsibility, with God's guidance, to love them, to nurture them, to care for them, and to make sure that every single one of them is educated. That is what our task is. And let me just say to all of you parents out there, I want to thank you, for being here. Because to me, parenting is the job that you get that don't nobody train you for. You know what I'm saying? And you be trying to ask your mama, you didn't tell me this. And she would say, well, I tried to tell you, but then you wasn't listening, and you know how that goes, right? But parenting is just the most crucial thing. But for those of us who are educators, when the parents bring their children to us, we have this deep obligation to educate them. And I've heard people say to me, Howard, I could do a better job as a teacher if I had better kids. And it took me a while to understand that, because I'm kind of slow. But what I understood was that the parents have sent us their worst kids, and they're keeping their best kids at home, waiting to see how we do with their worst kids. So for all of y'all who think that help is on the way, because one day they're going to send us their best kids. But what is the reality? The parents have sent us the only kids they got. And we have a responsibility to educate them. And the parents have a responsibility to love their children in very, very deep ways. So I just want to leave you all with this thought, two thoughts. Number one, the most important thing is to stay focused on purpose, not the method to get to purpose. Because what happens is, if we get focused on, I support charter schools, I support private schools, I support public schools, what happens is we get focused on the method. What we should be focused on is the reason for those things is to educate our children. And so it's that purpose that ought to get us up every day, not the method to get to purpose. Because the moment you become committed to the method to get to purpose is the moment you become a protector of the status quo. Secondly, the second thing is, and I just have to keep saying this, there's nothing more important than our children. And it's not about their future, it's about their present. Because people oftentimes say, oh, we gotta help these kids because they're our future. No, we gotta help these kids because their present reality is what's important. It ain't about something out there. It's about right now, today, right here. And not preparing them for their future, but giving them what they ought to have in their present. Because if you take care of their present, you will deal with the future. And so I want you all to think about it. And I just, again, I thank all of you all for coming out. And now I just want to stop and give you a chance to ask me any questions. Because some of y'all may have questions you've been wanting to ask me for 20 years. And why I did that, or why I said that, or why you thought I said that, or did you say that, or whatever. And I'm subject to saying anything. So I want to open it up, and I want to give you all the opportunity to ask me questions. So thank you very much.